In case it wasn't clear to anyone, Netanyahu had a plan that few trusted, but which is nevertheless proving to be a resounding political and military success. What does it consist of? Escalating to de-escalate. And that's why Netanyahu has no intention of letting up on his Middle East conflict.
Ladies and gentlemen, this war can come to an end now. All that has to happen is for Hamas to surrender, lay down its arms, and release all the hostages. But if they don't, we will fight until we achieve victory. Total victory. There is no substitute for it.
While the Israeli Prime Minister was uttering these words in front of the United Nations, his planes were about to bomb Beirut. The objective? A targeted attack to eliminate the Hezbollah leader, who had not been seen in public for years for fear of being assassinated by Israel's security and intelligence forces, which is precisely what ultimately happened.
Hezbollah confirms that its leader Hassan Nasrallah was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Hezbollah leader's death a historic turning point, Netanyahu says, as Iran vows revenge.
On Friday, 27th of September, Israel launched a massive attack from F-15 aircraft with more than 80 guided bombs to wipe out the man who was Hezbollah's leader for 32 long years. Nasrallah was the icing on the cake of a long and relentless list of targeted executions that have wiped out top Lebanese militia officials. In this bombing of Beirut, it was not only Nasrallah who fell. Israel took down other key names in the organization. We're talking about figures like Ali Karaki, the commander of Hezbollah's southern front, Ali Nayef Ayub, the mastermind behind the firepower, and even a deputy commander of Iran's Quds forces. And as if that wasn't enough, the attacks have continued ever since. Just over one day after the fall of the organization's leader, the Israeli armed forces continued their work of what they surely consider clearing the countryside.
IDF eliminates Hezbollah official Nabil Kaouk. The strike was achieved by Israel Air Force jets, guided by intelligence information.
And of course, as you all know, the invasion of Lebanon has now begun. Israel is deploying troops to dismantle the arsenals and pursue Hezbollah's structures in the very south of Lebanon. The IDF wants to take advantage of the fact that the terrorist organization is on the ropes to deliver the final blow.
VisualPolitik community, with the war hardly begun, Hezbollah, the most powerful paramilitary organization in the world, has been defeated by Israel in just 12 days. But wait a minute, wasn't the conflict supposed to be with Hamas? What on earth is going on? Well, let me tell you a quick story. It's said that 2,000 years ago, a Roman citizen could walk around the known world without fear of being harmed or disturbed. He could do so thanks to the words civis Romanus sum. I am a Roman citizen. That was enough because everyone knew the enormous and disproportionate punishment that Rome would inflict on those responsible for any aggression suffered by a Roman citizen. Well, that is exactly what Israel is doing now. Following the 7th of October attacks in 2023, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made a blunt decision to wipe out not only each and every one of the perpetrators, but also any threat to the country. The Israeli response would not only be a revenge operation, but a clear message to the world. Whoever dares to mess with Israel, let him face the consequences. And as I said, that's exactly what Israel has been doing ever since. From invading the Gaza Strip with indescribable and unprecedented force, Netanyahu began to lash out at his other major adversary, Hezbollah. At that time, the risk of open war began to worry everyone, and the international community tried to cool the tension to no avail. Netanyahu continued in his thirst. It was necessary to escalate in order to de-escalate. In this case, however, the roadmap had an unexpected twist. If you thought that the war in the Middle East was going to be simply a matter of bombs and missiles, you were very much mistaken. What is happening in southern Lebanon looks like something out of a real spy movie. I'm sure we were all astounded by this news.
Thousands injured in Lebanon as pages used by Hezbollah explode.
You probably all know the story. A few months ago, the Hezbollah leadership, probably on the advice of some trusted intermediary, took a decision. Minimize the use of cell phones to prevent their communications from being intercepted by Israel. Instead, they began using more background devices, such as walkie-talkies and pagers. These seemingly harmless devices make it possible to receive short messages without connecting to mobile networks or the internet. A seemingly clever idea until Israel did its thing. It has come to light that Israeli intelligence appears to have created a front company licensed the technology to manufacture these devices, put them into production, and then managed to sell them to one of its biggest arch enemies. With a twist, they put a small explosive in each of the devices, and finally, on 17th of September, they blew them up in unison. First the pagers, and then the walkie-talkies. The result? Devastating. Hundreds and hundreds of key Hezbollah militants were sidelined with severe wounds and severed limbs. civilians. What's more, as they went to the hospitals, about 3,000 people were identified as members of this terrorist organization. In other words, the organization's key network was exposed and severely punished. So how did Israel manage to do something like that? Well, I think it's no secret that the Israeli intelligence services, Mossad, are among the most sophisticated in the world, and it's clear that with this operation they have definitely taken the crown. Nevertheless, the offensive had only just begun. In the days following, both Mossad and the Israeli military continued to carry out surgical strikes that wiped out the entire Hezbollah leadership and many of its arsenals, without Hezbollah even having time to understand what was going on.
Israel fully prepared to maneuver against Hezbollah in Lebanon as airstrike deaths surpass 600.
And finally came the coup de grace. On September 27th, the Israeli Air Force launched a devastating attack on Hezbollah's facilities in Beirut, a place where Nasrallah himself was located and who, as you all know, lost his life. In less than 2 weeks, Israel has practically wiped out Hezbollah, at least with the organization structure it has operated under in recent decades. We're talking about all their top commanders and generals having been eliminated.
The success is indescribable, but it's not enough. Netanyahu's plan is clear. He wants to eliminate both Hamas and Hezbollah, and that's precisely why this is the perfect moment to finish the job and inflict the greatest possible damage on the Lebanese terrorist organization. To achieve this, Israel has taken another step, having its troops cross the border into Lebanon to target Hezbollah's infrastructure, arsenals, and personnel within the country itself. That's why we might witness ground operations aimed at destroying arsenals, factories, headquarters, and all kinds of equipment and infrastructure. It would be a blow Israel has dreamed of for years.
The point is that everything that we have told you about is part of a plan meticulously laid out by Benjamin Netanyahu's political circle. What does this strategy consist of? What could happen now? What are all these moves going to mean for the future of Israel? Well, we're going to look at all that right now. Listen up.
Escalate to de-escalate. Israel preparing for possible ground offensive in Lebanon, military chief says. Strikes designed to destroy Hezbollah infrastructure before possible incursion by troops, says Israel's top general.
If anything has become clear, it's that in the last few weeks, Netanyahu has made an absolutely crucial decision. That the only way to end the threat posed by Hezbollah is to take the war to a new level. No more exchange of fire games, punitive one-off operations, or warning shots. This time, the order was clear. To completely annihilate Hezbollah's leadership and capabilities, just as they are doing to Hamas in Gaza. Why? Because this is the only way to free northern Israel from the constant threat of Hezbollah rockets and missiles, a threat that has forced thousands of Israelis to evacuate their homes in recent months. Of course, massively bombing southern Lebanon, let alone launching a ground invasion, is an extremely risky strategy. There could be a lot of civilian casualties. Israel's armed forces could also suffer a lot of losses, and who knows, it could end up with the involvement of Syria, Iran, and a lot of different radical groups. That was the risk. But as I said, for Netanyahu, the time has come to confront Hezbollah face to face and nip years of threats in the bud. No more patches. So he stood firm and immovable. And VisualPolitik community later will see the exact military motives behind this decision. But in this case, I have to say that there was also a clearly political motivation. What am I talking about? Well, you see, the Israeli Prime Minister has been in the hot seat for months. The alleged corruption scandals that hound him, his obsession with modifying the justice system by reducing checks and balances in Israel, and the October 7th disaster sunk him in the polls. Right here on VisualPolitik, we've been very critical of the lack of a clear exit strategy in the midst of all this chaos. We've pointed out that the loss of civilian lives is a critical issue, and that it is unacceptable to launch a large-scale operation like the one in Gaza without a roadmap that goes beyond war. Anyway, the point is that Netanyahu's political fate seemed sealed. Nevertheless, once again, King Bibi has pulled himself clear. Unbelievable but true, Netanyahu has more lives than a cat. After the aggressive campaign against Hezbollah and the elimination of the Hamas leader in Tehran, look what happened.
Benjamin Netanyahu's polls rebound after aggressive Israeli operations. Since approving assassinations in Beirut and Tehran, the Premier's Likud party has taken the lead in national surveys.
According to Gallup Israel, his Likud party has risen from 16% to between 25 and 30% in voting intentions since the bombings in southern Lebanon began. And note that the polls predate the elimination of Nasrallah. Now, it's highly likely that the Prime Minister's popularity will have risen a few more points. The outcome? Netanyahu and his party, the Likud, once again have a good chance of renewing their power. And this despite the fact that the elimination of Hamas and an exit strategy for the Gaza war are still nowhere in sight. But whatever. Netanyahu has adopted the slogan, "I am a Roman citizen," and turned it into, "I am a citizen of Israel. Don't you dare touch me, or you'll have to face the consequences." It was in light of this that he made the decision to attack an important group of senior Iranian generals last April, the decision to kill Hezbollah's top military commander in July, the decision to assassinate the political leader of Hamas that same night, the decision to detonate thousands of Hezbollah fighters and walkie-talkies, and giving the green light to one of the heaviest bombings of the war to take out the Shiite militia's supreme leader. And as I said, all of that is something that ordinary Israelis are rating very positively. In other words, his escalate to de-escalate strategy is not only having results on the front lines, but also in national politics itself. What an ace.
King Bibi is back. If you compare Bibi now to Bibi 10 months ago, he's a different person. He's full of confidence. Bibi feels at the height of his power.
The question is, what could happen now? We're going to take a look at that in this video. But first, let's take a look at why on earth attacking Hezbollah was such an extremely important military target. Listen up.
A great enemy.
Okay, if you think Hezbollah is just another terrorist group in this troubled region, it's time to put things into perspective. First of all, there's something that has to be made very, very clear. Despite everything we've seen, Hezbollah is not Hamas. Founded in the 1980s and with a long history of fighting Israel, Hezbollah has grown to become one of the most heavily and best armed non-state paramilitary forces in the world. It is even, or at least was, more powerful and stronger than the Lebanese army itself. But what is it that makes this organization so dangerous? Well, to begin with, let's talk about a massive military arsenal. According to recent reports, Hezbollah possesses approximately 150,000 missiles and rockets, an overwhelming number considering that in the 2006 war, they only had about 15,000. And obviously, if that past number were enough to tie the war back then, what might they be capable of now? At the very least, they could overwhelm Israel's defenses and cause lots and lots of damage. But they don't only have missiles and rockets. In Hezbollah's arsenals, we find a much larger catalogue of weapons. For example, among its most dangerous weapons in the Almas anti-tank missile, a guided missile of Iranian origin that can pierce tanks and armored vehicles from kilometers away. Then, as well as missiles, rockets, and anti-tank weapons, Hezbollah has also significantly upgraded its drone fleet. Drones which have also been provided by Iran, of course. But that's not all. As we've already told you here on VisualPolitik, when we talk about Hezbollah, we aren't only talking about a relatively well-armed organization, but also, and above all, about a well-trained one. Why? Because after participating in the Syrian civil war, its fighters have a lot of experience and have learned the war tactics of conventional armies, something that would be an important asset if a ground war against Israel is ultimately unleashed again, as happened in 2006. Not only that, another major problem is that surely in the event of a direct clash, Hezbollah would not seek a conventional victory. Instead, using all its combat experience, it would try to drag Israel into a protracted conflict, using guerrilla tactics and its missile arsenal to saturate Israeli air defenses. To make it clear, this was the risk Netanyahu faced, and what led him ultimately to decide that the best defense was a good offense. And as we say around here, no sooner said than done. We've already witnessed it. In fewer than 15 days, he's disbanded this gang. But of course, it's one thing to disband, and quite another to eliminate. This has not yet happened by a long shot, but evidently, this armed branch of the Ayatollahs has been very severely hit.
However, there is still a risk that Hezbollah could regroup and attempt to use its remaining arsenal to seek revenge. That's why a ground invasion at this moment is crucial. Israel wants to take advantage of Hezbollah being on the ropes to deliver the final blow.
And so the question is, what now? Has Hezbollah really been dismantled? Could the war escalate? Well, let's see.
Ceasefire or invasion?
We've already told you, Netanyahu has no intention of taking his foot off the accelerator. In fact, just prior to the elimination of Nasrallah, both the United States and France attempted to intervene with a proposal for a temporary ceasefire. Their goal was clear: to achieve a truce that would allow residents of northern Israel and southern Lebanon to return to their homes with a minimum of security. But no, that was not going to be possible. This time, Netanyahu was determined. The plan was in motion and nothing was going to stop it. And so, this is what the Israeli Prime Prime Minister said to the United Nations just hours before giving the green light to the attack that would kill the Hezbollah leader once and for all.
Netanyahu rejects ceasefire proposal in Lebanon. As long as Hezbollah chooses the path of war, Israel will have no choice. Israeli Prime Minister rejected UN dialogue initiatives and lashed out at Iran for sponsoring terrorism in the region from Gaza to Lebanon.
You see, Netanyahu was clear. As long as Hezbollah chooses the path of war, Israel will have no choice. Bibi's belligerent stance came as a surprise to many, since, according to some US and French diplomats, Israel initially did appear to have given its private approval to the ceasefire proposal. Yet, as you can see, the Prime Minister had a complete change of heart. The war against Hezbollah will not stop until the 60,000 Israelis displaced from the north of the country can return safely to their homes. And VisualPolitik community, in order to achieve that goal, either a campaign of heavy airstrikes is maintained, as they are already doing, or they launch an invasion of southern Lebanon. In fact, there are many senior Israeli government officials who are arguing a very clear thesis. Hezbollah hasn't disappeared. It will soon reorganize, and that could give us a lot of problems. We must take advantage of the power vacuum to go directly against their military infrastructure and wipe out their equipment, their rockets, their factories, and most of their arsenals. In the same vein, IDF Chief of Staff General Herzi Halevi has ordered troops to prepare for a possible incursion into the neighboring country. And not only that, this time, the two main opposition leaders are calling on the government to do so. Let them stop beating around the bush. Let them step forward and put an end to the Lebanese militia once and for all.
This has been a tense and heated debate in recent hours, a debate that has ultimately led to Israel sending its troops into Lebanese territory. However, there is a strong likelihood that these will be limited operations. First, due to the damage already inflicted on Hezbollah, and second, because of the new role the Lebanese government itself could play.
Yet, at this point in time, it's likely that this intervention will not take place, or at least will be very limited. Why? Simply because the Israeli government may no longer consider it necessary. Among other reasons, because perhaps now, taking advantage of the power vacuum and the pressure from Jerusalem, the Lebanese National Army can intervene to bring some order and prevent the worst-case scenario from becoming a reality, an all-out war in its territory. That, at least, is what its foreign minister is saying.
We are all cognizant of the economic crisis that has been plaguing our country. And despite this, our government has taken a decision for 100,000 additional soldiers to be deployed to the south of the country. And this is not a mere detail. Quite the contrary, this is a clear political message to the international community, reflecting the fact that Lebanon fully intends to implement Resolution 1701, to which we are wedded.
Keep in mind that an Israeli intervention could be a disaster for this country. Lebanese Prime Minister Najib Mikati has estimated that there would be more than 1 million displaced people, and not surprisingly, the economy and his government would be blown out of the water. Yes, of course, not much can be expected from Lebanon, and Hezbollah has certainly not disappeared, but the entry into action of the Lebanese army could make a difference. After all, it was completely unthinkable just a few weeks ago.
And most importantly, this could be enough to avoid a full-scale invasion and limit Israel's actions to intervening only in the territory closest to its border.
In other words, that the IDF, the Israel Defense Force, appears to have won a war before it's even fought.
Netanyahu, ignoring allies and defying critics, basks in a rare triumph.
And keep in mind, it doesn't end here. Who is the biggest loser with the disaster that has befallen Hezbollah besides this organization? Well, logically, Iran, Israel's arch enemy. What has happened in Lebanon has been a clear warning. It has dismantled a large part of the Iranian force in the region, and on top of that, it has left the regime of the Ayatollahs severely weakened. After years and years of threats, when the moment of truth arrived, they were left dumbfounded and with their hands in their pockets. It's not surprising that the Prime Minister has shot up in the ratings. After all, his escalate to de-escalate strategy is proving to be a real success, despite the fact that he had almost no support from anyone. Well, it has been a success, except in Gaza. In that context, there is no way out of the war. Hamas is still holding a number of hostages under its control, and the Strip is in tatters, and no one knows what on earth to do next. And of course, things in Lebanon may get even worse with the successors of all the fallen Hezbollah leaders. But for now, Israel seems to have fewer enemies, and Netanyahu is flying in the polls. For now, King Bibi will be quoting what Colonel Hannibal Smith used to say. I love it when a plan comes together. Having said that, the question is, what is your opinion of the strategy of escalating to de-escalate? Do you think Israel will follow that path? path? Or is it time to cool things down? Leave us your thoughts in the comments and let's start a debate. And now, if you found this video interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe to VisualPolitik if you haven't already done so. All the best, see you next time.